Welcome to Virteva's Let's Talk podcast for February 2026. For the past few years, this show has been all about Microsoft 365 as a platform, the tools, the roadmap, and the changes that shape how we work. But as we move from 2025 into 2026, one thing has become impossible to ignore: that Microsoft's vision statement for Windows and Microsoft 365 as an ecosystem. It's Copilot. It's not just a feature anymore. It is fully embedded into all the tools we use to work. So as Copilot becomes more of that layer that touches everything from security to licensing to governance and how we're actually getting things done as everyday users, I thought that this was a good opportunity to start the year fresh and evolve the Let's Talk podcast into more of a Let's Talk Copilot type of podcast, because that's really the platform that Microsoft is developing. So going forward, we're going to focus a little bit less on what Microsoft is announcing and talk more about how you can actually better understand those announcements and what it means when you're the one responsible, whether you're an IT admin, a decision maker, or a trainer, on how you can make these changes work in the real world. So to kick off 2026, we're going to start by exploring through a short series on what it really takes to move Copilot in your organization from a pilot into something that's operational, secure, and defensible to leadership, who is, advocating for these licenses for your employees, or just advocating in general for the services for your employees, because we all know that those Copilot licenses, especially the paid ones, aren't cheap. And with some of the changes that are shifting and changing in July of this year, with licensing across the board for most business and enterprise licenses going up to kind of afford some of these newer freemium features that are coming down to the basic chat version of Copilot that doesn't require that paid license, it becomes more important. So for the first part of this series, we're going to start with a question that I hear all the time. And that question is, why do so many Copilot deployments look great on paper or in a demo and then stall out after I've bought 30, 50, 100 licenses for my org? So let's start with the problem, because on paper, Copilot sounds like the easiest win to IT right now. Is you purchase the license, you hand it out there, and everyone's got AI and they can make their work lives so much easier, and everything's just going to get done. You can upload files into it and it'll just do the work. Well, the reality of that is that it's not true. Is while Copilot does help by delivering a new set of AI-based features and services to employees, is if you don't go through the proper kind of workshops and training and enablement exercises with an employee, and then kind of stay on top of them and continue to promote new features that are coming to the platform, as employees quickly either don't realize that they're there or they stop using them. So part of our workshops that we run internally as we work with different customers is helping them understand not only what's available, but helping them kind of enforce behavioral change. So sitting down with groups of different employees in different departments that work in different types of roles and have different expectations, and helping them understand where they can take advantage of Copilot to kind of enhance their day-to-day. So whether it's note-taking in meeting, or quickly formatting an email, summarizing a thread of emails that they might have missed, helping them schedule something on their calendar, or even taking advantage of some of the agentic pieces of Copilot to help them work faster, smarter, and kind of get like that work to like that 50% of the way there or 80% of the way there, and then helping them polish up. But one of the main pieces to really think about there too is most end users, they don't know how to prompt, and prompt engineering was this big word that was out there, and now they're kind of shifting it more into the agentic focus of, agents work alongside humans to make work easy. But like, I think Microsoft is pushing this forward like it's a bullet train, and we're moving at 100 miles an hour to Microsoft. But most organizations, especially smaller ones and even larger ones, that maybe they have more difficulty adopting new types of technology just due to their overall size, and some of the processes and procedures and just kind of workflows that are already in place that slows everything down and adds that extra layer of red tape is they can't move that fast. And that's why kind of sitting down during your pilot and rather than just rolling out the licenses and saying, here you go have fun. I think that a lot of organizations really kind of need to better understand that most users don't know how to prompt. They have 20 to 25 years of kind of Google based enablement built into them of I'm going to type in 2 words to Google and it's going to find what I'm looking for. When you're asking Copilot to do something, you're asking any generative AI tool to do something, is you need to have kind of that clear goal in mind, context, what's the expected and desired result, um, in order to build kind of like a strong couple of sentences or maybe even like a couple of paragraphs on exactly what you want the AI output to look like, and providing like source documents or references to different public websites or SharePoint sites, OneDrive documents, stuff like that. That's all going to help as well. And again, like the promise versus the reality conversation that I'm trying to get across is the promise is that AI can do all this wonderful stuff, but the reality is just that kind of stuff isn't actually happening in a lot of organizations as the license get rolled out, but there is no kind of ongoing training program. There is no one behind the scenes looking at the Copilot dashboards that exist out there or the reports that show up in your Microsoft 365 admin center to kind of give you a better idea of like, all right, well, we've got 50 to 100 different licenses deployed out there. Where are we actually using them? Are people taking advantage of them in Word, in Excel, or is everybody just using it really in Teams for Teams meeting recaps? And I can speak from experience. I do that inside of our own organization and I host office hours. I'm actually doing a couple trainings at the beginning of February as we roll more Copilot licenses out throughout the org. And people find what works for them. And a lot of times they just don't move past that. And that can be okay for the individual employee. But when you're talking about adding additional layers of return on investment to these licenses and speeding up processes and enabling your employees to do more now that they have some of those AI tools in front of them, it can be difficult if you don't really understand what they're doing. So what we do internally is we do those office hour workshops once a month and we talk about, hey, these are all the new features that are coming in, and we try and leave time out there for employees to ask me questions or ask other people questions on the team to better understand, how can we support you, how can we help you be a better prompter, prompt expert, and kind of get them started. And to be completely honest, from real world experience, is I feel like a lot of employees and a lot of leaders just hear the word agentic or agent because it's being rammed down our throats by these big tech companies, and they skip right over the basics of, hey, how do I prompt and how do I get good results out of this and how do I iterate, and they just jump straight into the newest thing, which is building agents. And building agents, we're working with different organizations internally right now, and they'll come to us with this pie in the sky idea of how can they improve their RFP process, or how can they build scopes faster, or how can they review contracts better. And the first thing that I say to them generally is, what is your optimized workflow? What's your process today? When you look at workflow engineering, do you have all this already built out? And generally what I hear, and we hear this internally too from different groups, is, oh, well, when I go to create a new style is I just look for a document that I worked on 5 years ago, and then I copy pieces from here and there, and then I drop them into a new document. Um, and then I fire that off. But a lot changes if you don't have standardized sources of information. So if you don't have a standardized service portfolio, you don't have written product descriptions down somewhere, is, yeah, people are generally, and I don't want to really call them lazy, but to a degree, they are just kind of, how do I get this done as fast as possible so I can move on to the next thing? And that's what Copilot can help with. But you have to put the work into building an agent to actually get the value out of accurate responses that are repeatable. And that's kind of the reality of it is, you can't just skip ahead to agents, just like you can't just hand out a license and say, go wild, record your meetings and use the transcripts and take notes. Like if you don't reinforce the who, what, why, where, when of using these tools, is they just don't get used the way that you kind of initially wanted them to if you're an executive or a leader when you're rolling this stuff out. And I think that post-purchase expectations versus reality, this is where it really starts to set in, is you buy these annual licenses, and then 3 months later, 6 months later, you're looking at it from a, hey, am I getting my money back on this stuff? And what you're really kind of seeing is, no, you're not. Like, people are, they're writing emails with it, and sometimes you can tell that they're writing emails with it because the emails that AI writes don't always look super great. Like, you have to kind of touch them up a little bit. Same thing with document creation. I hear this about PowerPoint all the time. And by the way, the PowerPoint that you're actually seeing me present today, this is entirely built with Copilot. I did a little bit of touching up on some of the backgrounds and some of the fonts. But this is a look at the new frontier version of PowerPoint, where it's using those new Anthropic sub-processing models on the back end to actually create a better looking presentation. For the last year and a half of PowerPoint being out there with Copilot using the OpenAI models, I'll be completely honest, they look like crap. They're just not, they're not great. I understand that you're trying to create something and produce it fast, but I would spend more time in that OpenAI model with PowerPoint, probably changing everything in the presentation, than I would have if I actually just built it from scratch. Now, with this new Anthropic model, which I'm very excited about because they're doing this with PowerPoint, they're doing it with Word, they're doing it with Excel, is I think that we're going to get more out of it just because of the way that that model is trained and thinks. Is it can build things a little bit more analytically, a little bit more creatively. It can pull the right images in. But again, this is one of those things, is when you're moving in from post-purchase expectations into the realities of what the product is, if you didn't tell a regular to everyday employee how they can build a PowerPoint from a file, or how they can use these new frontier models that are rolling out this year into the spring, is they're not going to know that they're there. They're going to use the old PowerPoint Copilot once, and they're going to be like, well, I don't like this. This didn't do a very good job. I'm never going to touch it again. So kind of having those feedback loops and doing training and enablement every 3 months, every 6 months, maybe even every week, if you have a good champions program built up with your center of excellence and your adoption hubs, is you can kind of keep the flow of thought going. You can take people and send them to someone and allow them to ask a question and get good answers out of them. And that not only leaves a positive impact on the employee, but it shows a positive impact from the organization, that they're continuing to kind of field those questions and understand real world problems, and help you kind of shift from that initial marketing mode where you kind of, hey, we've got all this great stuff. We're sending out the emails. We're letting everybody know that they have Copilot. We're investing in AI, to actually more of an advisory mode, which is what we specialize, or at least I specialize here at Virteva. Other folks on the team that I work with do as well, such as Holly and Chris. And it fixes kind of that wobbly ground that you're standing on, by ensuring to your employees that we bought these licenses and they're not just here for you to use; they're here for you to take advantage of, and we want to help you use them. So yeah, I pushed forward a slide here for those of you that may be watching on YouTube, just to kind of go through technical enablement, business adoption, and the gap. And a lot of these things are things that I already talked about here. But yeah, technical readiness is an easy first step, is especially with Copilot, is all you have to do is buy a license and assign it to someone and you're done. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're ready. There's a number of different things that come into the business adoption piece and the gap analysis on that. And from a business adoption standpoint, is before you deploy these licenses, are you actually ready? Like, is your staff ready to take that next step? And you can do that kind of with pre-training before putting the licenses out there, but also cleaning up your data and helping your employees understand, hey, how do I properly create a document with different styles in Word? How do I format Excel data correctly? Am I even using company branded templates for PowerPoint? Like these are all things that you can use to start getting ready for it. And then really the gap that kind of happens there and after it is, you know, have you actually gone out there and looked at like how many SharePoint sites that you have that don't have owners, that have stale data on them? If you're thinking about building an agent, you know, are you just going to point at a SharePoint site that has thousands of files on it, but 70% of them haven't been touched in 5 years? Like that's not a good idea, and that's where kind of doing your due diligence as an admin and as a trainer and as a business leader come into play to help your adoption and enablement with employees. Because again, if you build an agent, for example, and you point it at a SharePoint library and you tell it to, go build RFPs or help build out different project templates, Copilot can't always make sense of what the most reliable information in there. So if you're not putting metadata on this, if you're not cleaning up old documents and archiving it, or putting identity protection labels on it, for example, to hide some of that more sensitive information, is you're probably going to end up having a bad time and creating more questions and headaches for yourself. So preparation and enabling your employees and getting the environment ready. These are all things that you can do to really kind of prepare yourself before you even roll out those licenses. But if you're listening today and you've already rolled out Copilot and haven't done some of these things, those are things that you can start going back and doing today that will overall improve the experience for employees coming up over the next couple of months as you make those changes and improve your overall kind of like data estate, health, et cetera. So we kind of talked about getting ready. I wanted to share some final advisory thoughts. Again, one of the kind of the goals for these podcasts this year is to make them a little bit shorter. Some other things that you can do kind of outside of even the SharePoint, the Teams channel realm to help employees kind of get a better feel for what they can do with Copilot is just, doing those internal workshops that talk about how you made adjustments to SharePoint, to Teams, how ensuring employees that, we sat down, we looked at our data, we were confident that we are not oversharing. We have looked at our sensitive data, we've labeled it. We've confronted kind of those permission and those data hygiene problems that existed out there for years. But don't just clean up the data, train your employees not to make the same mistakes. A lot of times it's easy to just drag and drop files into a SharePoint location or a Teams location to share them. But does anyone ever touch them again? Do they get accessed for 3 months and then never edited or never deleted or never moved to an archive location? So train your employees on how they can actually do better job at maintaining their own data. Not only is this going to help Copilot, but just in general, it's going to help you as an organization make sure that A, you don't have overexposed data, but also B, there's just data that could be sitting out there that is huge in file size that's racking up your SharePoint bill or your Azure bills because of how you're storing that. You could put archive policies in place. You could automatically take documents or videos that have been sitting there untouched, unmodified, unviewed for 2-3 years. You can say, you know what, let's put those up in blob storage, whether it's in Microsoft 365 through their backup in storage tools, or maybe you move them to AWS or you move them to Google Cloud. There's a lot of different solutions out there, whether they be first party or third party, that you can move that data out of Copilot's view and just kind of protect it and keep it if you need it for compliance or legal reasons. But these are just things that you can work with your employees to train them on best behavior. And that's kind of like the whole point of this podcast today is talking to your employees and helping them get a better understanding of what they can do to be better stewards of your data, um, rather than putting it all on the backs of your IT admins. So if you're deploying without direction or guardrails, I think you're kind of getting the idea of how you're really not seeing the return on investment on those licenses. And you're also probably seeing the inconsistent adoption and inappropriate kind of questions, queries, prompts. All of these are things that sitting down and really understanding what can I do with Copilot, sitting down with your M365 experts and your trainers and building out or working with a vendor such as us, Virteva, it goes pretty far beyond what you would get without it. And that's really just enabling your employees to make good decisions and also kind of right sizing your data and your environment permissions to make sure that you're not overexposing anything. And as the year goes on here, I plan on dipping even more into kind of the security of it, the different features, the different functionalities, and different strategies that you can use to really kind of take advantage of Copilot. But this is kind of the initial thoughts on 2026 to kind of get you ready and help you understand what getting ready actually means. So there's some foundational requirements, and I'll just kind of read these off. And again, they're kind of on screen for our PowerPoint or for our YouTube viewers in the PowerPoint. And it really all kind of starts with understanding your data estate and applying good hygiene across your SharePoint, your team sites, your OneDrive, classifying the most sensitive data, removing stale data, correcting permissions, sprawl, um, identifying those access management areas where you need to really kind of enforce least privilege. We're big fans of zero trust. In fact, we're such big fans of zero trust that it was one of the first couple podcasts on the channel 2 or 3 years ago. Putting those data loss prevention policies in place. And by the way, data loss prevention is getting even better with Copilot. Announced at Ignite more ways that you can kind of prevent data that is sensitive or sensitive information types within your environment from leaking into prompts and preventing Copilot from being able to respond on that. And this is really kind of what builds your foundation to give you a secure liability rather than just a productivity tool. And yeah, that is kind of what I wanted to talk about for the most part today. Again, we're really trying to just set the stage in today's podcast, give your executives specifically a little bit more ownership and your team's a little bit more ownership of kind of those goals, metrics, KPIs that you see in Copilot dashboards. And as we kind of continue to go on, we're going to start talking a little bit more about, why does Copilot, why does generative AI make your security teams a little nervous, and why, in kind of a strange way, that's a good thing. One of the first groups that we actually worked with a couple years back when they adopted Copilot is the first thing they did was they worked with us and their security team to kind of try and understand how do we prompt Copilot to try and find the most sensitive data in the environment. What types of identities do we need to set up to kind of understand what the base level is going to have access to, and how do we restrict Copilot from seeing information through using either identity protection labels or restricted search or some of the SharePoint advanced management features. So these are all things that we're going to talk through as we kind of go through the next few months here, headed into kind of the middle of the year, where we'll kind of step back and then we'll take a look at where Copilot's at today, especially with all kind of the new kind of like freemium features that are rolling down, and how you can continue to take advantage of that stuff and kind of a look at what's coming next. So we'll still kind of plan on talking a little bit more and doing some more kind of demo focused content. But I wanted to kind of start up this podcast series to get a little bit more away from just, hey, it's new, and talk more about, hey, well, here's what's actually there and how you can take advantage of it in some of the common kind of missteps that we see, not only customers that we work with and are kind of helping get up to speed, but also new ones that are coming in that have never touched generative AI before, and they really want to adopt it because that's what every other organization out there is doing. And how do they do it the right way the first time? So thank you again for tuning in, especially if you made it all the way to the end. If your organization is interested in Microsoft 365 Copilot, or you're already using it and you need help really kind of fine tuning it or help with enablement and adoption for employees, you can contact Virteva by emailing us at letstalk@virteva.com or by visiting our website at www.virteva.com. Until next time, have a great rest of your month, and don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons. It really helps the channel grow and get this message out to more people. Have a great one. Take it easy. Bye.